Today's tutorial is going to be really quick and easy, but we're actually going to learn something that is super important and valuable to people who want to develop on Wix. So this is my studio workspace, and you can see here a bunch of sites that I have, and you might notice here that one of the sites kind of sticks out and looks a little different than the other ones. So first of all, you'll notice it's marked here as premium, and we'll talk about the significance of that in a moment, even though I didn't pay a cent for this website. You'll notice the name here is Dev Site X something something something. That could be changed. But most importantly, the beginning of the URL or the domain here starts with dev-sitex-something something something, where typically the websites start with YouTube-something something, which is just my account name. So you'll typically have your account name, then .wixsite.com when you create an initial free site. But this one here, it's marked as premium, but it has this weird kind of name to it. This is a dev site. And the significance of a dev site is that it essentially acts as a premium site. So you can really do pretty much anything that you want, and you won't hit any of the paywall blockers that you might typically hit in Wix, such as not being able to check out and stuff like that. So if you're experimenting with APIs that have to do with Wix stores, Wix bookings, or other things that you just think that you might hit some kind of paywall or blocker that is related to your site not being premium, you're going to want to develop on a dev site. One caveat of this is that dev sites currently are all Wix Classic. So there are no dev sites in Wix Studio, so you can't really do what I'm saying here if you specifically want to experiment with Wix Studio, but most of the things that have to do with the developer environment are pretty much identical between the two. So anything you do in this classic dev site, you should be able to do in Wix Studio as well. So hopefully I've sold you on the importance of the dev site by now, and you're probably wondering, okay, how do I get one of these dev sites? So unfortunately, the way to get a dev site is not extremely straightforward, but it's also not overly complicated. All we have to do is go over here inside of our workspace to custom apps. And if your workspace doesn't kind of look like mine, then you might not be using a studio workspace. Another channel that you may be able to gain access to this to is if you just go to the Wix website and specifically the developers area. So if you go over here to wix.com/studio/developers and click here, start developing, I think that will get you to a similar entry point to what I'm showing now. But I've been on Wix so long that I don't even remember how I got to the point where I have kind of a studio workspace. Typically, you might not have it if you just have created one single site on Wix. And then you might not have your own workspace, but it's not something that's hard to get or set up. Just kind of Google Studio Workspace Wix, and within a few minutes, I think you'll be somewhere around here. So assuming that you have your workspace kind of opened in front of you, here you can see this custom apps area. And this is where we can create apps for Wix websites. And this is kind of the main ability or the main dev experience that these dev sites are here to facilitate. So building apps for Wix, but they work equally as well if you're just developing things for Wix websites using like Velo code or the JavaScript SDK within Wix. So you don't necessarily have to be building an app to enjoy using dev sites. I often use them for other things as well. So in order to create a dev site, what we're going to need to do is to have an app. And the easiest way, I think, to get to it is to go through the Blocks app. So you can either use a Blocks template over here or use a Blocks blank canvas. Or if you have an existing app, you can just kind of go into your existing app. So now my Blocks editor is kind of starting up, and don't worry, you don't need to know anything about Wix blocks or building apps in Wix or anything like that in order to get your dev site. This is just kind of the channel through which we have to create the dev sites, because again, their primary purpose is for testing out apps. So what we could do over here is go over, now once you're inside of the Blocks editor, you'll notice that there's a test option over here up on top, and we can just go ahead and click test. And depending on what you've already added to your app, this will kind of prep your app in order to create it. You may need to add like a namespace if you've done anything in your app, but if it's a plain blank app, you should immediately get to this. And this is where we're trying to aim for. So select a development site. So you can see here I have one dev site that's already here. That's the dev site that I had showed you before inside of my workspace. And we have this option right over here to create a dev site. So if I just go over here and click create dev site, then I see here that actually I contradicted I was wrong. Okay, and I'm not gonna go ahead and edit that out, but you'll see here now that you can actually create a dev site for Wix Studio, which is a nice new update. So I was correct until sometime not too long ago, I feel. But it seems now you can actually select between the Wix editor and the Wix Studio editor. So whoever dropped out of the video earlier lost out and has some inaccurate knowledge there. But yeah, for those of you who have followed along until now, then you can see here that I stand corrected. So we can select here which editor we want to create a dev site for. Let's say I pick the Wix editor for now, and then I'm going to click here, continue on the bottom. And we have the option to add in some business solutions. You can choose to do it now. You can also do it later on, just as you would install apps to a regular Wix website. So one interesting thing that we have here is that we can also experiment with the new V3 catalog, which is coming out in about a month for everybody. So this is especially useful kind of if you want to play around with like new features, new APIs. And let's say, for example, I just go ahead and install Wix bookings on the site. So I'm going to go ahead and create a dev site. And now you can see here that I have my dev site here that has been created. And you can either go ahead and just click test app, and that will eventually take you to the editor of that site itself. Or you can just end at that point. And just now, if you go back to your workspace and you go over here to sites, then you should see that dev site pop up over here. So it's over here, and you can see already that it's premium. Okay, so it'll behave just like a premium website, which means that I can essentially go to the checkout. This isn't a good alternative for actually buying a premium plan on a Wix website, if that's something that came to mind. I don't think that you can attach a custom domain to these dev sites. And you also have this kind of like big disclaimer that you'll see on the live site. So if I just go over here and I hit publish and we head over to the live site, then you'll see what I'm talking about. There's kind of like a big banner up there on top that says this is a site for development, and it should be used for testing purposes only. So this is not going to be something that's very effective for your business. It'd probably scare some clients away. But if we go over here, for example, to services, so I don't seem to have any services set up right now. But if I was to go here to the site dashboard, let's just set up an example service, and I'll take you all the way through to the checkout so you can see kind of what the experience would be like and how it would differ than a kind of non-premium site that you create out of the box. So I'm just going to go over here to catalog. And I'm just going to choose, let's say, the online meeting. Well, this one's free, so we can change it here to be paid. So I'm going to just do here, let's say, fixed price, $50. And I'm going to save this online meeting. Let's see what the availability is. Let me make sure here. Okay, so it seems like there's availability already set up by default. So we should now be able to see that service over here on our live site. There we go, online meeting. So I'm just going to go ahead and book now, schedule appointment, and hit next over here. And just fill out some test info right over here. And I'm going to go to book now. And so typically what would have happened at this point on a standard non-premium Wix website is you would have gotten like a warning there hey, you can't create any bookings now. Please upgrade to premium and connect a payment provider or something like that. So this is really the big difference in the experience. And if we just put up the phone number over here and click continue, so you'll see here that it's set to manual payments that we can actually kind of go through with the payment and then essentially test different things that would be related to checkout. Like we can do different service plugins. We can check things that are related to, hooks that have to do with after the order has been placed and stuff like that. So these dev sites really afford us a lot more than a standard site would afford us in terms of development. If you're just building your site and you're just doing kind of design and standard native out of the box, then there isn't much of a difference because you can access most of the stuff that you have control over with just the standard design. And anything that you build in your test site, you then have to transfer over to your standard site because there's no way to go and kind of convert from this into a regular site afterwards. So this is really just like a testing ground for experimenting, testing out APIs, building solutions that you're later going to move to an actual website or testing out apps, of course. So that's all here. We're going to wrap up for today. Again, it was a really just short, quick tutorial, but I think that this is something that could be helpful for a lot of you who are starting your development journey, or you've been developing on Wix and you've encountered these issues and you're not really sure how to overcome them. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you did, just go ahead and hit that like button. One small step for the viewer, one large step for myself as the creator. So that would really be helpful. If you have any questions or want to share anything about your experience using dev sites, you can go ahead and hit the comment section below. And if you want to see more tutorials like this, but also lots of other different areas within the Wix ecosystem, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.